Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most ambitious, hilarious, and frankly, bizarre undertakings ever seen in the time Brian Griffin decided to build a city. Not just a small town, mind you, but a sprawling metropolis designed for 500,000 people. It's a tale of ambition, intellectualism, and a dog who might have bitten off way more than he could chew. So, grab your martini, get comfortable, and let's explore the rise and inevitable fall of Brian. It all started, as most of Brian's grand schemes do, with a sense of intellectual superiority and a healthy dose of dissatisfaction with the world around him. He looked at Quahog with its random chicken fights, its bumbling mayor, and its general lack of high culture, and thought, I can do better. He wasn't just complaining at the drunken clam anymore. He was drafting blueprints. His vision was for a utopian society, a city that would be a beacon of intelligence, culture, and rational thought. He imagined a place free from the idiocy he felt he was constantly surrounded by. The first step was acquiring the land. Through a series of improbable events involving a forgotten inheritance from a distant, literary-minded relative and a lucky break at the dog track, Brian secured a massive, undeveloped plot of land just outside of Quahog. He called it the New England Riviera, a name that immediately told you everything you needed to know about his aspirations. He envisioned cobblestone streets, libraries on every corner, cafes filled with deep conversation, and an entire population that appreciated obscure jazz and foreign films. To fund this monumental project, Brian did what any aspiring intellectual would do. He wrote a best-selling self-help book titled Wish It, Want It, Do It. Maybe the book was an accidental hit. It was filled with vague platitudes and philosophical musings that people somehow found profound. The royalties started pouring in, giving him the capital he needed to break ground. Construction began with a flurry of activity. Brian, acting as lead architect, city planner, and cultural minister, was everywhere. He insisted on using sustainable, eco-friendly materials and avant-garde architectural designs. The first buildings looked less like homes and more like abstract sculptures. There was the deconstructionist diner, where the menu was a philosophical essay, and the postmodern post office, where mail was sorted by emotional weight rather than zip code. His first hires were equally ... specific. He only wanted people who could quote Proust from memory and who owned at least one. The first wave of citizens started to arrive, drawn by Brian's promise of a new Athens. They were a mix of struggling poets, adjunct professors, baristas with PhDs, and people who described their profession as simply thinker. The population was growing, but it was an incredibly homogeneous group. Everyone agreed on everything, which, as it turns out, is incredibly boring. The city council meetings were just a series of smug agreements and self-congratulatory Brian's dream city, which he officially named Brianville, had some unique laws. For instance, pop music was banned, replaced by a 24/7 citywide broadcast of NPR podcasts and minimalist classical music. Small talk was punishable by a fine, forcing everyone into deep, often exhausting conversations about the nature of existence every time they went to buy organic kale. The city's mascot was a thoughtful-looking raven, and the official sport was competitive, sighing. Peter, Lois, and the rest of the Griffins decided to visit, and their arrival was the first real test of Brianville's utopian ideals. Peter immediately tried to open a Pawtucket Patriot AO Fun Zone, which was shut down by Brian's cultural purity police. Chris and Meg found they couldn't relate to anyone, as their interests in pop culture were seen as primitive. Stewie, however, was fascinated. He saw the city not as a utopia, but as a perfectly controlled environment ripe for a social experiment. He began subtly manipulating the city's infrastructure, just to see what would happen. The cracks in Brian's perfect society started to show. The economy, based entirely on artisanal coffee and unpublished novels, was non-existent. There were no plumbers, no mechanics, no electricians, because those jobs weren't considered intellectually stimulating enough. When the city's experimental plumbing system, which was designed to recycle water based on the principles of Zen Buddhism, inevitably failed, no one knew how to fix it. The streets once pristine, became flooded with oil-colored water. The citizens of Brianville, who had been so agreeable, started to turn on each other. Arguments broke out over who was more intellectual. The poets accused the philosophers of being too mainstream. The philosophers accused the artists of being too commercial. Brian tried to mediate, giving a long, rambling speech about unity and the common good. But his words fell on deaf ears. The very people he had handpicked for his utopia were proving to be just as petty and flawed as the people he left behind. Stewie, revealing his hand, triggered his master plan. He had secretly developed a device that amplified intellectual insecurity. Suddenly, everyone in Brianville felt an overwhelming need to prove their intelligence. This led to chaos. People started challenging each other to impromptu debates in the streets. A poetry slam turned into a riot, and the library was looted not for books, but for rare first editions to be used as status symbols. Brian watched in horror as his dream crumbled. The city was tearing itself apart from the inside out. He had wanted to create a world without idiots. But he had only created a world full of a different kind of idiot, the kind who thought they were better than everyone else. In a moment of clarity, standing atop his half-finished Tower of Reason, he realized his mistake. He had built a city based on exclusion and arrogance, not on genuine community and understanding. The final blow came from nature itself. A flock of ordinary quahog pigeons, attracted by the spilled artisanal grains, descended upon Brian. To the Hamendid citizens, the birds were a vulgar intrusion of the common world. The ensuing panic was the last straw. The population fled, running back to the messy, imperfect, but ultimately more real world they had left behind. In the end, Brian was left alone, standing in the ruins of his once great city. All that remained were a few leaning, architecturally confusing buildings and the faint, lingering scent of pretentiousness. He returned to Quahog, tail between his legs. When he walked into the drunken clam, Peter, Quagmire, and Joe didn't mock him. Peter just handed him a beer and said, "Tough day." Brian sat down, took a long sip, and for the first time in a long time, he felt genuinely at home. He learned a valuable lesson. A perfect world isn't one without flaws or foolishness. A perfect world is one where you're surrounded by people who accept you, flaws and all. And sometimes, what you're looking for has been right there on Spooner Street all along. The grand experiment of Brianville was a colossal failure, but in that failure, Brian found a little bit of wisdom, and isn't that the most intellectual pursuit of all? Thanks for watching, everyone. What do you think of Brian's utopian city? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, do you forget to like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the wild world of our favorite animated families? See you next time!